They were ordinary women until Nazi uniforms gave them power over life and death. As the camps collapsed, these SS guards faced a reckoning the world would never forget. If you value documented World War II history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. Now back to the story. Behind uniforms, power carried both privilege and moral peril. Across Nazi-occupied Europe, women were recruited into the ranks of SS camp guards, entrusted with authority over prisoners in concentration and labor camps. Initially drawn by promises of employment, status, or ideological indoctrination, many of these women found themselves stepping into a world where obedience, cruelty, and surveillance defined every day. From the moment of recruitment, they were trained to enforce rules with absolute authority, to monitor inmates, and to maintain the oppressive structures that allowed atrocities to occur. The audience is immediately engaged, drawn into the tension between ordinary women and the extraordinary, moral weight of their positions. Training programs were rigorous and designed to instill both discipline and loyalty. New recruits learned the hierarchy, the expectations of their superiors, and the methods of control, ranging from routine oversight to punishment. Manuals, drills, and ideological instruction emphasized the subordination of conscience to duty, teaching guards to view prisoners as less than human, deserving of strict enforcement. The psychological impact of this indoctrination was profound, creating a blend of fear, ambition, and ideological commitment. Viewers are drawn into suspense and moral reflection, questioning how ordinary individuals could carry out such extraordinary cruelty. Early, authority allowed female guards to exercise power in ways rarely afforded to women in the broader societal context of the 1940s. They patrolled campgrounds, monitored work details, and supervised punishments, often acting as extensions of the male-dominated SS command. This authority came with privileges: better living quarters, social recognition, and access to resources, but it also carried the heavy burden of moral compromise. Every order enforced, every command executed, implicated them in systemic brutality. The audience experiences both curiosity and ethical tension, exploring the paradox of empowerment intertwined with complicity in crimes against humanity. The moral landscape for these women was complex. Some guards participated willingly, embracing ideology or ambition. Others acted out of fear, peer pressure, or coercion. Testimonies from survivors, interrogations, and historical documents reveal instances where individual choices, small acts of kindness, or moments of hesitation were rare exceptions in a system designed to suppress empathy. For viewers, this interplay of psychology, ideology, and action creates suspense, inviting contemplation about human behavior under extreme hierarchical and moral pressure. Ultimately, the rise of female SS camp guards illustrates how authority, ideology, and circumstance can converge to produce both complicity and personal moral conflict. Their recruitment and indoctrination highlight the mechanisms by which ordinary individuals became agents of systemic oppression. For the audience, this section provides immersive historical context, moral tension, and psychological insight, drawing curiosity and engagement while setting the stage for the collapse of this authority. In the following chapters, the empire crumbled, and the once untouchable faced the consequences. As Allied forces swept through Germany, the carefully maintained authority of female SS camp guards disintegrated almost overnight. The camps, which had been instruments of terror and control, were liberated, exposing the guards to the full glare of justice and retribution. Those who had wielded power over prisoners now found themselves vulnerable, their uniforms offering no protection against the advancing forces of accountability. The audience is immediately drawn into suspense, sensing the tension between past authority and imminent reckoning. Detainment was swift and often chaotic. Guards were rounded up in the rubble of camp barracks, escorted by soldiers, and subjected to initial questioning. Many were confronted with the realities of their actions for the first time outside the protective structures of the SS hierarchy. The narrative emphasizes the stark contrast between their previous dominance and sudden exposure to the law, drawing viewers into the drama of reversal and the fragility of power. Each moment heightens curiosity. Who would face prosecution? Who might escape? And what justice would be meted out? The psychological impact of this sudden reversal was profound. Women who had once enforced punishments, administered discipline, and observed atrocities were now witnesses to the liberation of survivors, many of whom testified to their cruelty. The weight of guilt, fear, and uncertainty was immediate and palpable. Diaries, interrogations, and historical records revealed that some guards attempted to minimize involvement, deny participation, or rationalize their actions, while others succumbed to despair under the realization that authority had vanished. For the audience, this creates a morally charged suspense, encouraging reflection on accountability, human behavior, and the consequences of unchecked power. Public exposure amplified the tension. Allied investigators, local populations, and liberated prisoners scrutinized the guards, documenting their identities and roles within the camps. This period marked the beginning of systematic prosecution and historical documentation. The narrative emphasizes the reversal of power dynamics. Those who had enforced terror were now under surveillance, questioning, and sometimes immediate confinement. Viewers are engaged through both historical accuracy and psychological immersion, understanding the stakes for each individual guard as the mechanisms of justice took hold. Ultimately, the collapse of Nazi authority for female SS camp guards was both literal and symbolic. Uniforms that had once conferred status and control now carried the stigma of complicity. Their exposure to legal and moral consequences illustrated the fragility of power derived from oppression and the inevitability of accountability. For the audience, this section provides suspense, anticipation, and moral engagement, setting the stage for the forthcoming chapters on trials, punishments, and the enduring legacy of these women within historical memory. Under the weight of truth, confessions revealed chilling details. Female SS camp guards, once untouchable within the hierarchy of terror, now faced the relentless scrutiny of Allied forces. Arrested in the aftermath of liberation, they were escorted from the crumbling camps into interrogation rooms where the consequences of their actions could no longer be avoided. The atmosphere was tense, a mixture of fear, shame, and anticipation. As the guards were confronted with survivor testimonies, camp records, and evidence meticulously compiled by investigators, the audience is immediately drawn into suspense, eager to witness how authority crumbles when held accountable. Interrogations were methodical and uncompromising. Officers questioned the guards about their roles, responsibilities, and specific actions during the administration of the camps. Each response was weighed against survivor accounts, documents, and photographs, exposing inconsistencies or outright lies. Some women attempted to deflect blame, claiming obedience to orders or ignorance of the broader context, while others confessed in the face of overwhelming evidence. Viewers are immersed in the tension, balancing curiosity with moral reflection on complicity and accountability. The psychological pressure was immense. Many guards experienced fear, panic, or denial as they realized the gravity of the crimes for which they were responsible. The interrogation rooms were spaces where ideology collided with reality, where the authority once granted by uniforms, training, and fear of prisoners dissolved under questions that cut to the heart of their actions. For the audience, this creates moral suspense and emotional engagement. They witness the inner turmoil of individuals confronted with both legal and ethical consequences. Witness testimonies were central to the process. Survivors recounted the cruelty, punishments, and abuses they endured under the guards' supervision. These narratives added human weight to the evidence, making it impossible to ignore the consequences of obedience to immoral authority. The audience is drawn into empathetic tension, imagining the fear of prisoners and the moral reckoning experienced by the guards. Each testimony served as a mirror, reflecting not only the horrors committed, but also the broader ethical failings that allowed such systems to function. By the end of this phase, the female SS personnel had been stripped of the protective shield of anonymity and authority. Each confession, denial, or rationalization was documented, forming the foundation for subsequent trials and sentences. The narrative emphasizes the transformation of power dynamics. Those who once enforced terror now faced scrutiny, exposure, and accountability. For viewers, this section provides suspense, moral evaluation, and historical immersion, highlighting the intersection of personal responsibility, legal procedure, and the broader human consequences of complicity in systemic atrocities. Justice arrived, though uneven, leaving lasting consequences for the women who had served as SS camp guards. Following interrogation and trial proceedings, sentences varied widely, reflecting both the severity of crimes and the complexities of post-war legal systems. Some women were handed lengthy prison terms, confined to cells where the weight of their actions pressed upon them daily. Others faced forced labor assignments, contributing to reconstruction efforts or performing tasks that underscored the reversal of their former authority. The audience is immediately drawn into suspense, curiosity, and moral reflection, witnessing the tangible consequences of complicity. Prison conditions were harsh, designed to impose both physical and psychological accountability. Guards accustomed to imposing discipline now experienced confinement, routine scrutiny, and the social isolation of incarceration. Diaries and post-war accounts indicate that many struggled with fear, shame, and regret, forced to reconcile the ideologies that once guided them with the undeniable moral and legal consequences of their actions. Viewers are immersed in the tension and emotional weight, feeling both the discomfort of the perpetrators and the satisfaction of accountability. Societal reactions extended beyond the walls of detention. Female SS personnel often faced ostracism from communities, neighbors, and even family members, reflecting broader moral condemnation. Villagers, survivors, and liberated prisoners bore witness to their past actions, creating a social and psychological landscape in which these women were held accountable not only legally but culturally. For the audience, this amplifies suspense and ethical engagement, emphasizing that justice extended into everyday life, shaping the perception and treatment of these individuals long after the war ended. In some cases, the punishment was uneven. Factors such as age, rank, level of involvement, and cooperation with investigators influenced sentencing. Some women avoided severe penalties, highlighting the imperfections and inconsistencies of post-war justice. These disparities provoke reflection for viewers, encouraging critical thought about fairness, accountability, and the limitations of legal systems in the aftermath of large-scale atrocities. Suspense and curiosity are sustained as the audience considers who faced the harshest consequences and why. Ultimately, the sentences and confinement of female SS camp guards illustrate the reversal of power and the imposition of moral and legal order. Those who once wielded authority over life, liberty, and daily existence now confronted the tangible results of their complicity. The audience is engaged on multiple levels: emotionally, by understanding the personal consequences; morally, by evaluating the ethics of actions and punishment; and intellectually, by considering the historical and social implications of justice in the aftermath of systemic atrocity. This section closes the chapter by emphasizing both accountability and reflection, preparing viewers for the next stage, understanding the legacy, memory, and lessons drawn from the experiences of these women, and how history continues to interpret their actions. Their names survived in records, a testament to accountability and warning for future generations. The women who served as SS camp guards left behind a complex and troubling legacy, preserved through meticulous documentation by historians, survivor testimonies and archival materials, court transcripts, photographs, and post-war investigations created a permanent record of their actions, ensuring that their complicity and the suffering they inflicted would not fade into obscurity. The audience is drawn into reflective suspense, considering both the personal and systemic consequences of historical memory. Historical research has illuminated the scope and nature of their involvement. Scholars have studied recruitment files, camp rosters, and administrative records to identify patterns of behavior, command structures, and the ways in which ordinary women became agents of terror. Documentaries and museum exhibits often focus on the moral and psychological dimensions, emphasizing how ideological indoctrination, social pressure, and ambition intersected to produce acts of cruelty. For viewers, this creates intellectual engagement, providing both context and ethical reflection on how individuals navigate power and conscience. Survivor accounts amplify the human dimension of memory. Those who endured the camps recount encounters with female guards, detailing acts of cruelty, intimidation, and rare moments of mercy. These narratives are preserved in interviews, memoirs, and educational programs, offering visceral insight into the lived experience of oppression. For the audience, the inclusion of first-hand accounts fosters empathy and emotional resonance, grounding abstract historical facts in real human experience. Suspense and moral engagement are sustained as viewers grapple with the contrast between authority and humanity. Archival photographs and investigative reports reveal both the scale of authority held by these women and the mechanisms of accountability after the war. Trials, detentions, and post-war investigations created a factual basis for understanding their actions, allowing historians to assess both individual and systemic responsibility. The audience gains a layered understanding, appreciating not only the crimes committed, but also the societal and legal frameworks that sought to address them. This reinforces curiosity and critical thinking, as viewers are invited to consider questions of justice, fairness, and historical interpretation. Ultimately, the historical record preserves the complexity of human behavior under extreme conditions. Female SS camp guards, once instruments of terror, are remembered both for their crimes and as subjects of ethical and psychological study. The audience is encouraged to reflect on the broader implications: how authority can be abused, how societal structures enable complicity, and how memory shapes our understanding of morality and history. By engaging emotionally, intellectually, and morally, viewers are left with a comprehensive sense of the enduring lessons and warnings embedded in these historical records. The past teaches what must never be repeated. The story of women who served as SS camp guards is not merely a historical account. It is a lesson in human behavior, authority, and moral responsibility. These women, entrusted with authority over prisoners, became agents of systemic cruelty, illustrating how ordinary individuals can become complicit in atrocities when obedience and ideology override conscience. For viewers, this section provides ethical engagement and intellectual reflection, connecting historical events to contemporary questions about accountability and the human capacity for both cruelty and choice. Societal lessons emerge clearly. The complicity of female SS personnel highlights the dangers of hierarchical systems that demand unquestioning obedience. Structures that suppress individual moral judgment can produce environments in which atrocities are normalized. Educational programs, documentaries, and scholarly research examine these dynamics to demonstrate the mechanisms by which ordinary people are transformed into instruments of oppression. The audience is drawn into moral contemplation, recognizing the relevance of these lessons for modern institutions, workplaces, and social hierarchies. Ethical considerations are central to understanding the repercussions of complicity. Post-war trials and societal responses aim to enforce accountability, yet outcomes were often uneven. Some guards faced imprisonment, labor, or ostracism, while others escaped severe consequences. This disparity invites reflection on the limits of justice and the complexity of moral evaluation in large-scale atrocities. Viewers are engaged through suspense and curiosity, contemplating both the fairness of historical outcomes and the broader implications for contemporary ethical dilemmas. The narrative also emphasizes the importance of memory and reflection in preventing future abuses. By studying the experiences of female SS guards, modern societies gain insight into how ideology, social pressure, and authority can distort ethical decision-making. Educational programs, museums, and historical texts serve as tools to ensure that the moral and psychological lessons of the past remain present in collective consciousness. The audience is encouraged to think critically about the conditions under which obedience can become complicity, fostering moral vigilance and empathy. Finally, the story resonates on a personal and societal level. The repercussions faced by these women, and the ethical reflection their actions provoke, underscore the enduring importance of conscience, courage, and accountability. Viewers are prompted to consider their own decisions, the influence of authority in daily life, and the moral responsibility that comes with power. By engaging both intellectually and emotionally, this section closes the narrative arc, leaving the audience with a lasting understanding of the dangers of complicity, the necessity of ethical reflection, and the critical importance of historical memory. The past, though distant, continues to speak. Through the examination of female SS camp guards, viewers are reminded that history is not merely a record of events, but a repository of lessons about human behavior, morality, and the imperative to act ethically, even under pressure. This reflection leaves the audience morally engaged, intellectually stimulated, and contemplative long after the narrative concludes.